ए ईसा यकीनन मैं तुझे वफात देने वाला हूँ और अपनी तरफ तेरा रफा करने वाला हूँ और तुझे उन लोगों से निसार कर अलग करने वाला हूँ जो काफिर हुए,
separate from those people who disbelieved and those people who followed you, and over those people who have denied you, I am going to make them dominant over those people until the day of judgment. And then you are going to come back to me, and then I will decide for you in those matters in which you have been differing and having different opinion. This is from Al Imran. And in the other place he says, وَقَوْلِهِ مِنَّا قَتَلَّ الْمَسِيحَ عِيسَى ابْنَ مَرْيَمَ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ وَمَا قَتَلُوهُ وَمَا صَلَبُوهُ وَلَكِنْ شُبِّهَ لَهُ وَإِنَّ الَّذِينَ اخْتَلَفُوا فِيهِ لَفِي شَكٍّ مِّنْهُ مَا لَهُم بِهِ مِنْ عِلْمٍ إِلَّا اتِّبَاعَ الظَّنِّ وَمَا قَتَلُوهُ يَقِينًا بَلْ رَفَعَهُ اللَّهُ إِلَيْهِ وَكَانَ اللَّهُ عَزِيزًا حَكِيمًا. And because of their saying that certainly we have we have killed Isa, who was the Prophet of Allah, they have not been able to kill him nor to crucify him. The matter has been made confused upon them, and those people who have differed in this, they are just following a conjecture. They do not have the real knowledge about that except following the conjecture, and certainly they have not been able to kill him, but Allah Almighty exalted him to himself, and Allah Almighty is most dominant and very high. Hazrat Masih Maud says about these verses that in this verse Allah Almighty has in the sequence mentioned himself as the subject, and then he has mentioned 4 actions of him in the order one by one. First of all, Allah Almighty has mentioned the one who has actually done this thing, the file, and what is that, and what are those actions which he did. He says that, O Isa, I am going to cause you to die. This is the first thing. I am going to cause you to die, and secondly, I am going to raise you to myself. And the third is that I am going to absolve you from the allegations of the disbelievers, and those who are going to follow you, I am going to give them the dominance over the disbelievers. So this point I will explain later on, what is the meaning of that. Certain people have a question about it, and it's quite obvious. He says, Masih Maud says that all these 4 things have been mentioned in the right sequence, and the sequence which it ought to be, that is in the same order it has been mentioned, and there is no doubt that the person who is called upon by Allah Almighty, Irji ila Rabbeke, that you come back to me, the news goes to that person. It is essential that first he should die, and then according to Irji ila Rabbeke, according to this one, that according to the hadith, that his exaltation is towards Allah, and it is essential for the spirit of a believer to have been exalted towards Allah. And the hadiths, the true hadiths, they support this meaning, they support this point. There are several hadiths. So according to that, Huzur says that let me explain it first, that this another point which has been mentioned, Irji ila Rabbeke, which has been mentioned here. Let me explain that. The full verse is like this: Irji ila Rabbeke raziyatam marziya, and the meaning of that is that in the state of being happy with Allah, you come back to Allah and getting the pleasure of Allah Almighty. Hazrat Masih Maud says in one place, and explaining the same meaning, that Allah Almighty, by causing the Messiah to die, then he exalted him to himself, as the expression is said that pious people, when they die, it is said that such and such a noble person was exalted to himself, as Irji ila Rabbeke, the wording indicates to this one. Allah Almighty is present everywhere, and he is watching over everything, and his presence is not physical and does not have a particular direction. So then how can I say that the person who was raised to heaven, to Allah, then certainly his body would have reached the heaven? This is far from truth. The righteous people, according to spiritual understanding, they are always raised to Allah Almighty, and not that their physical body and bones they reach God Almighty. The understanding of Ilm Kalam which he has given, and he has explained the point in several ways to understand, help us to understand the verses of the Quran and the commentary that he has given. That is such that when a person with a pious heart does not understand, they cannot reads it, they cannot understand it. Anyway, those people who don't want to understand and those who are not gifted with the understanding, they won't be able to understand that. This person also said that he does not understand this. And continuing the subject which I was reading, I continue. Then the promised Messiah ﷺ says after that, whatever he said to the Isa ﷺ, that I am going to absolve you from the allegations of the opponents, that this is reference to the point that the Jewish people wanted, that they should kill Hazrat Isa ﷺ, and that should be according to the Deuteronomy, what is written in the Bible, that whosoever dies on the cross, he dies in a cursed death, and he is not raised with the honor to Allah Almighty. So Allah Almighty gave the glad tidings in this verse that you will die a natural death, and then you will be raised to me with glory and honor. And those people who wanted to crucify you, and the people who are the efforts which they are being done by your enemies, they are going to be frustrated in that. And whatever they are planning to do and trying to do that, and I am going to put all these allegations, they are going to be kept away, and you will be absolved with it. That is to say, the crucifixion, and the result of that, the view of the Christian, the Jewish people was there. What was the impact of that? That is to say, the curse and the deprivation from prophethood, and not to get the exaltation to Allah Almighty, and the raising of the status. So all these are the effect of that belief. And here in the word tawafa, there is a fine reference to this point, that he will be saved from the death on the cross. Because this meaning of tawafi is very clear, that it's a natural death. That is to say, such a death which may be because of some ailment or sickness, and not as a result of certain injuries or unnatural way. And so many commentators of the Holy Quran also have mentioned it, that inni mumituka hatfan fika, that is to say, that not as a result of falling or as some injury, not like that, but I will cause you to die in a natural way, in a normal way. Regarding that, the word tawafi is not used, but the word tawafi is used for such death which is a natural, where normally this word is used. So he says that this is a reference to the third part of the verse, that the reference is to mutahiruka min allazina kafaru. It is all the more prominently mentioned there, reference to this third part of the verse, the mutahiruka min allazina kafaru, that clearly indicates, as it is mentioned there at the third point. So this is the natural sequence, as it has to be there, that I am going to purify you, and that is what it means, that I am going to protect you from the allegations and their ill effect.